known as Myanmar in the West since 1989, continues to be a geographical enigma. Located in Southeast Asia, it is a country that has existed in almost total seclusion since the end of the Second World War. However, there is much more to Burma than what is actually known. Burma is made up of enchanting places that are difficult to describe. Examples are the bright pagoda of Shwedagon, situated in the center of the capital, Rangoon. Located between Thailand and Bangladesh, Burma shares a boundary with China and India in the north. Large rivers and extensive fertile plains divide the center of the country. The major part of the agricultural land is located in the lowlands bordering the river Irrawaddy. The river, an important means of transportation, practically divides the country in half. It begins in the mountainous regions of the north and ends in the vast delta of the Gulf of Martaban, covering a distance of 2,000 kilometers. The mountains rise in the east, bordering Thailand, and the north at the extreme end of the Himalayas. The navigable rivers permit the construction of irrigation systems which consequently enrich agriculture. Rice is the major produce that sustains the population. Burma was the first country in Southeast Asia to adopt Buddhism as a state religion in the 11th century. Approximately 87% of the population practices Theravada Buddhism, which is also practiced in Thailand, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka. This devotion coexists with a strong belief in Nats, the spirits of the land. Burma is a country of stupas, pagodas, or Buddhist relics, which reveal the artistic talent of the Burmese. Christianity, which was brought into Burma by the Portuguese at the beginning of the 16th century, coexists along with the state religion. Nowadays, it is very rare to find a city in Burma without a church and its respective parish. There exists a strong devotion to the infant Jesus and the Virgin Mary. The use of the veil in the processions clearly identify the Christian communities. Burmese Buddhism has elements and ceremonies from Brahmin Hinduism, present in the cosmology and the Nats pantheon. The Indian communities that were brought in by the British during the 19th century continue to practice their beliefs. Islam, that was diffused in Southeast Asia by the Arab merchants and the Gujaratis, continues to exist. The Chinese dominate the economy of the country. They manage the most prosperous businesses. Burmese, Shans, Karens, Mons, Kachins, Chins, Kayas, and the Arakanese constitute the indigenous population of 46 million people. We are essentially talking about a rural population that inhabit the countryside and live from it. Within the minorities, we find the Bayingyis, descendants of the Portuguese, that are Burmese citizens like the rest, but remain Catholic. They can be found throughout the country, especially in 13 villages situated 100 kilometers from the northern capital, Mandalay. Burma still remains to be a closed country. With well-defined boundaries but weakened by depopulation, plague, and a lack of resources, Portugal reinforced its maritime fate from the 14th century. King John II encouraged exploration of the African coast at the south of the equator as a means to achieve a link between the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. The goal was achieved with the crossing of the Cape of Good Hope in 1488 by Bartholomew Diaz, and above all with the arrival of the fleet of Vasco da Gama in Calicut 10 years later. The voyage of Vasco da Gama established a regular maritime link between the West and the East. Thus, a new era in world relations was established. From a commercial point of view, this revolution flooded the European markets with the well-known spices. The Portuguese were dedicated not only to the transportation of spices from Asia to Europe, but also to the trade in spices between Asian countries. The entire Portuguese maritime network was managed from Goa, which was not only a cosmopolitan mercantile center, but also the center of the evangelization in Asia. The key player in the Portuguese commercial empire in Asia was Afonso de Albuquerque, who conquered Goa, Malacca, and Hormuz. These conquests were aimed at taking control of the strategic maritime routes of India, southern India, and the Persian Gulf. The strategic location of Malacca between India and the Pacific Oceans permitted the control of the maritime routes, replacing the Muslims as merchants in the local trade. The Portuguese officially arrived in Burma at the time they conquered Malacca. The country was then a principality of Toungoo, along with Ava, Pegu, and Arakan, important kingdoms in the region, which were totally divided. In his book Pilgrimage, Fernão Mendes Pinto refers to the riches of Burma. The Portuguese traders in Malacca were attracted to the Burmese relics of Burma. They came in search of the well-known wood, cereals, and precious stones. King Anawata found the first unified state of Burma in Pagan in the year 1044. Writings of Burmese history commence around this time. The conquest of the Tatan kingdom of the Mons in 1057 by Anawata commences what many consider the golden period of the country. Burmese culture, as it is defined today, is actually a fusion of the Mon and Burmese cultures that occurred during this era. Pagan was a famous city that many people fantasized about and wanted to explore. In 1287, the Mongol Kublai Khan accelerated the decline of the city when he began looting Pagan, which at that time had 13,000 pagodas. Pagan nowadays is the jewel in the crown of Burmese tourism. King Anawata is also responsible for installing Theravada Buddhism as a state religion, and also for establishing the Burmese alphabet. The Pagan kings were zealous protectors of Buddhism, which survived the fall of Pagan and other empires. The widespread adoption of Buddhism in all of Burma, although high, did not replace the pre-Buddhist practices of worshipping the Nats. It is common to find religious spaces dedicated to these spirits under the huge and old banyan trees. It was in the shade of one that the Lord Buddha was enlightened. Mount Papa near Pagan is considered the home of the most powerful Nats. At its peak, monasteries built by kings symbolize the adaptation of the state religion to the Nats. The elephant as a war animal assumed widespread importance in the strategies of the Burmese kings. The rare white elephant was an object of veneration and a symbol of power and royalty. The elephant even had its own palace, which was guarded by soldiers, served by ministers, entertained by dancers, and washed in sandalwood perfumed water. The veneration of the white elephant, in line with Hindu traditions, is still alive in Buddhist religion. Moreover, the animal is considered as one of the incarnations of Buddha. Portuguese interest was above all commercial. They therefore established themselves on the coast, such as Martaban, a point of entry and exit for merchandise that circulated in the Siloam Valley. Contrary to the inner kingdoms, whose economies were based on agriculture that were in constant conflict with one another, the kingdoms along the coast of Burma prospered. At the beginning of the 15th century, Arakan on the east coast and Pegu, the capital of the Mons kingdom, flourished. Pegu consolidated its sovereignty over important seaports such as Martaban and Kosamim, managing them with extreme caution and efficiency. It was in these seaports that the Portuguese initiated their trade. 1511, Afonso de Albuquerque guaranteed peace, friendship, and trade with the Mons of Pegu through one of his messengers, Rui Nunez. He was seeking the support of the natives against the common enemy, the Muslims. In August 1512, the trade administrator, Pero Paez, embarked on the St. John junk to Pegu. Martaban, formerly a part of the Mon state, nowadays consists of a couple of small houses and streets, with very little business activity. The poverty here reflects the general state of the country. The railroad as well as the main road meet their end in Martaban. Together they continue south from the other side of the river, Salamu in Moulmein, also known as Marmalo in the Portuguese chronicles. Commerce here took place on land, where there existed underground warehouses, which were a first step towards creation of a trading post. The improvised shipyards repaired all ships that were damaged in storms at sea.
It
was in the port of Martaban that the Portuguese began their adventure in Burma. They arrived in 1511 as the first messengers sent from Melaka by Afonso de Albuquerque. They came in search of food, such as rice, and also for boats that were being built here in large quantities. Among the various types of boats existed the junks, which were the base of Portuguese navigation in all the region. Following the mission of Pero Paez, the Portuguese state of India obtained permission to establish a permanent trading mission in Martaban. This trading mission supervised the supply of rice to Melaka. However, the Portuguese administrator of the trading post, Duarte Pessanha de Alencar, retreated riding on elephant back. The retreat was a result of misunderstandings between the local population and the Portuguese residents. These were the first demonstrations of power by Portuguese outcasts that used to trade by themselves and resisted monopolization by the Portuguese state of India. Every half an hour, a barge links Martaban to Moulmein. The trip lasts between 20 to 30 minutes. However, the duration depends on the strong currents that stretch from Syrian to Martaban, as already indicated in the 16th century navigation charts. The Burmese railway system remains obsolete with almost 5,000 kilometers of railroad, 500 stations and 300 locomotives, with some of them still using steam engines. Passenger cars are normally overloaded. However, trains can be a good alternative to the dusty and tattered roads. Formerly the horse, nowadays the locomotive, the rhythm has remained practically unaltered. The journey remains endless and schedules are rarely followed. Built on the river shores, which is linked to the Irrawaddy Delta, Pegu overwhelmed the first European visitors, including the Portuguese. The imperial courts were proud of their palaces, temples, treasures obtained with the income from trade, and the loot from conquered cities. Bago, formerly Pegu, is a shadow of what was once not so long ago a prosperous city. The king, responsible for Burma's reunification, ordered Chinese architects to build a plan for a luxurious square city, based on the plans of the Forbidden City in Beijing. Replicas of the royal chambers and the courthouses that were originally in gold were rebuilt. The small but prosperous Pegu kingdom soon attracted the Burmese greed. The Burmese were anxious to possess a maritime link that would allow them to benefit from the trade revenues in the Indian Ocean routes, which were on the rise. In 1538, the prosperous capital of the Mons was conquered and looted by Burmese forces. Pegu, once a small kingdom along the coast, was now transformed into a head of a vast empire. Although incorrectly, Pegu's name was applied not only to the city, the kingdoms, and the sub-kingdoms, but to all of unified Burma by the foreign visitors, including the Portuguese. Although Pegu was very effective at the administrative level, it lacked military power. Therefore, they enlisted the help of mercenaries in their armies, among which were the Portuguese, to resist the first Burmese attack. However, the conquest of Pegu could not be avoided. Pegu became the capital of the Mon Kingdom in 1740, but this did not last forever.
Só em 1740 seria de novo capital dos Mon, mas não por muito tempo.
Pegu was looted in 1598 by the allied Tangu and Arakan forces. This was a period of disintegration of the empire. The temples of today reflect the war episodes in a legendary way. The Hinthu Gonpaya Monastery illustrates the events relating to the founding of the city and the conflicts for control over the city by three forces: the Portuguese merchants that buried copper plates on an island located in the middle of a lake, followed by the Burmese that buried a basket of beans at the very same spot. Finally, the Mons that left iron tools at the same place. After mankind, two Hinthas, mythological birds, landed on the island, a symbol of celestial intervention that established peace and entrusted the city to the Mons. Worshipping of divinity is performed through pues, festivals which are regularly organized in pagodas. With strident music, which is strange to Western ears, dances are performed paying homage to the Nats, elements of the spiritual world. The Nat dance is gentle. Its secrets are transmitted by older dancers to the youngest ones. The dancers are disguised with costumes as transvestites. In the Pues, as in exorcisms, one or more Nats are invited to possess the body and mind of a spiritual medium, a link between the human and divine. At the beginning of the 16th century, the Pegu kingdom stretched from the Negrais Cape to Tavai. It shared a boundary with the Arakan kingdom in the west and with the Siam kingdom in the east. Cosmim, together with Rangoon, is the most important port of the delta. Up the river and starting from the Negrais Cape, which is still known by its Portuguese name, we arrive in Cosmim. Here we are in the middle of the delta with a boat for transportation. The river as a way of life. The population along the riverbanks live in huts standing on wooden stilts. They are dedicated to fishing and cultivation of rice. At the entrance of Cosmim, we are greeted by temples and the gracious movements of the East Asian gondoliers. As in many other cities, the crossing from one bank to the other is made in big barges and rowing boats. Contrary to Pegu, the Cosmim port is still active due to increasing rice exports that has brought in some prosperity. The mixture of cultures and races that characterize the city is visible in the local architecture. As in Macau, Melaka, and other cities, here too there is a fusion of Chinese, Portuguese, and Muslim elements. It is common to find bicycles and motorbikes in the city. Strong and well-preserved trucks dating back to the Second World War are still driven on these roads and even on beaten tracks. The trucks transport consumer goods throughout the country. Burmese people prefer their traditional outfits to wearing Western-style clothing. The fabrics exported to Burma originate from Coromandel on the southeast coast of India. They are traded for food in Burma. In seaports such as Cosmim, many Portuguese renegades lived and traded freely. Although forbidden by the Portuguese state of India, they took part in the trade business. They were members of a shadow empire that would not hesitate to owe allegiance to the empire whenever it suited their interests. Cosmim, one of the major Pegu seaports, used to function as a vice kingdom, managed by local authorities. Portuguese merchants would take rice, wood to build ships, gold, rubies, other precious stones, and food. In exchange, they offered fabrics from the Coromandel coast and opium from Yemen. The well-known umbrellas produced in Cosmim are in fact parasols that are permeable and provide protection from the intense sun of the delta. The umbrellas are produced by local families. The parasols used by monks, which are saffron in color, are the only ones that can be used during the rain. Their impermeability is due to the application of several layers of resin. Parasols of different colors are produced in several shades. They are always colorful. Generally, they are plain or with simple geometric patterns. In addition to the national festivals celebrated throughout the country, Buddhist pagodas organize their own festivals. The majority are held during the full moon cycle, right after the rice harvest. It is a period that is favorable to the building of new temples. In processions, people formally dress to recreate historical episodes. On his arrival in Cosmim, the writer and adventurer Fernão Mendes Pinto came across a small Catholic community which had resulted from interracial weddings involving Portuguese soldiers and merchants that had established themselves there. Following the Portuguese tradition, the Burmese continue with interracial marriages. The wedding party is a big celebration involving all the community. We were immediately invited to join in the celebration. The menu has several elements that have been inherited from the Portuguese culinary delicacies. Sponge cake is famous all over Asia. There are daily trips from Cosmim to Rangoon. After reviewing the navigation routes of Goa and those from Koshim to Pegu in April and September, Gaspar Pereira dos Reis in 1634 wrote, "From the Cape of Negrais to Seram Harbor, there exist approximately 35 leagues. All this area is shallow, with some parts being shallower than others." Seram is in the Urawada Delta near Rangoon. At the beginning of the 17th century, Seram was the headquarters of an establishment managed by a Portuguese renegade in the service of Arakan, Felipe de Brito de Nicot. The administration of the trade post was a reward for his participation in the conquest of Pegu. The episode is described in a temple in Pagan. A discontented Brito transformed the trade post into a fortress. This act of rebellion against Arakan gave him control over the Delta area. He also tried to possess Cosmin and Martaban. Brito populated empty lands by giving them to people with tax exemption. In October 1602, there were approximately 14 to 15,000 people under Portuguese protection in Syria. The ceilings of a few temples in the north of the country describe the Portuguese period of Pegu, mainly the use of firearms and the role of the Portuguese mercenaries. The Catholic community of today still holds Felipe de Brito in high regard.
Especially when the time came, there was a de Brito who was in league with the Arakan king. So the Arakan king sent him to quell the trouble here in Syria. He came down, he conquered, and then he made himself king. So we call him King de Brito. He was in league with the Tongu king, and then the two, they pledged a friendship, and they said, we will fight together, we will live together, and we will die together.
The Tangu Kingdom was an obstacle to the Ava king's ambition till 1613. Brito and the Tangu king had a very close relationship. The king even converted to Christianity. The alliance between the Portuguese and the king, a relative and rival of Ava King, is explained by Brito's need to use the Taungoo kingdom as a base to move into the interior, where all the riches were traded in the seaports. However, the king of Ava had occupied Taungoo in 1609. At the request of the dethroned king, Brito marched on the city. After ransacking the city, he took refuge in Syria. The monarch of Ava retaliated by closing the Portuguese trade post in 1613, thereby ending the rule of the captain. At the pagoda of Mahakalayani in Pegu, there still exists an ordination hall dating back to 1476. It was the first of 400 spread throughout the country, which were all built based on architectural plans brought from Ceylon. An almost mythical figure, Felipe de Brito, is cast as a hero or as a traitor in the chronicles. His approach is considered negative due to his hostility towards the official cult of the Burmese Empire. During the attack on Pegu in 1599, the Portuguese captain ordered the burning down of this Buddhist ordination hall. Although his relationship with the Buddhist was tense, his relationship with the Christians was cordial. The renegade enjoyed huge prestige from the Jesuits, to whom he gave lands and an island of the Delta. In this context, Brito ordered the building of the Church of Our Lady of the Mount. Few records of this church exist. However, what we do know is that the church was burnt down in 1607. The date on the signpost clearly indicates that this church made of bricks was built by order of the Barnabite priest Narini, probably at the same site as where the original temple existed.
A
church in ruins surrounded by dense vegetation and a tombstone is what is left of the Portuguese presence in Syria. Located on a settlement that grew around the fortress, the church, built by the order of the nobleman and adventurer Felipe de Brito de Nicot, dates back to the 17th century and was an excellent observation point. There exists a tomb and two tombstones with different dates, one in Latin and the other in Portuguese, in a small house. Other tombstones, originally from the Church of Syriam, are kept in a barrack surrounded by an iron fence, not so far away from Pegu. The tombstones are inscribed in Portuguese, Latin, and Armenian. In barracks such as these, Burma keeps important pieces of its past relationship with Portugal. The place where Felipe de Brito was king and master nowadays houses the residences of the directors of the Myanmar National Petroleum Company. U Sen Tan, a mechanical engineer, showed us a little of the glory of the past in the form of ceramics, mud walls, bricks, some strange pillars. The site is in need of urgent investigation. There has never been any archaeological excavation on this site. The mausoleum of Nat Sing Naung, the brother-in-arms of Felipe de Brito, is not in better shape. Both died by order of the Avanese king, Anup Pet Lung, in 1613. Brito was impaled and Nat Sing Naung's chest was torn open. The king of Taungoo, a man with great vision, was a soldier, sportsman, and a reputed poet. After the downfall of the nobleman, the management of the cult was handed over to Goan missionaries. They did not know Burmese and therefore preached in Portuguese patois. The St. Francis Xavier Church can be designated as the successor to the Church of Our Lady of the Mount.
In Syrian, there are families that have names like De Cruz, De Souza, and Abrus, how do you pronounce? These names are still there. There is, for example, one mechanic here. He says his father is a Portuguese descendant who lives in a village near the pagoda.
Several Portuguese surnames exist in the parish church records.
These names like this, Fernandez, Lobo, Sequeira here, and here is a Portuguese gentleman, Cyril Wilfred Brito, marrying Margaret Elizabeth alias Malachi in the year 1932. Then you have here Fonseca, a lady, and then there is another Baptista here.
The community of Syriam did not disappear. With no motives for territorial conquest, there was an increase in private trade with the Portuguese and diplomatic activity between the Portuguese state of India and Arakan and Ava became a reality. The Arakan and Ava kings fought for supremacy over Burma. The Portuguese were the military strength that they needed to intimidate and maintain their status.
Tell us about your name and your age.
My name is Willie Abreu. My age is 76 years old.
Where were you born?
I was born in Burma,
In Syriam?
in Syria.
Names on tombstones are everything that is left of the Portuguese presence. In Rangoon, there's Cunha Street and the printing houses of Di Rosario and De Silva. Priest Salgado, St. Anthony's Church, and Our Lady of Fatima Church. The families, Melo, Gomez, Ataída, Siqueira, Lobo, Baptista, Fonseca. There is even a political leader, David Abel. Situated 30 kilometers from the Indian Ocean in a fertile delta south of the country, Rangoon grew near the Yangon River. The majority of 4 million inhabitants use the river to go to work. Portuguese chronicles from the mid-17th century described it as the Dangoon seaport and its relative importance in comparison with the seaports of Pegu, Syriam, Martaban, and Kazmin. Boats from Cambia and Sumatra arrived at the Dangoon port. This port would rise in importance with the fall of Syria. Visitors to the city are greeted by trees and lots of shade. Rangoon is the last capital of Southeast Asia to retain a colonial atmosphere. How long will it be before it succumbs to the syndrome of the modern metropolis? There already exists intense traffic. Two-wheelers are even becoming practically extinct. Rangoon acquired capital status in 1885 with the conquest of Greater Burma by the British. The post office main building is one of the landmarks from the colonial past. People on the streets do whatever they can to make a living. The Suli Pagoda is located exactly in the center of the city. It is a landmark from which all distances are measured. The ancient and modern coexist in Burma, which is full of surprises and contrasts. From the central station, a circular railway serves the surrounding areas, from downtown to the satellite villages, and then returning to the main station. It's a 3-hour trip which provides us with the pulse of the population of the capital and the surroundings. The cars function as a market on wheels. Here you can buy vegetables, fruits, traditional medicines, and a variety of handicrafts. Large, voluminous packages are thrown out of the window before arriving to the destination platform. Therefore, things will be collected, a daily occurrence at the rhythm of eternity. Almost unnoticed, like the crossing of 2 trains, here we are again at the central station of Rangoon. Kandaugi Lake is a good observation post to appreciate the main Shwedagon Dome. In one of the sections of the Upghat Chapel floats, Buddhist divinity protecting mankind from situations of imminent danger. The landmark of Rangoon, the Shwedagon Padoga, that can be translated as Golden Dragon, is the most sacred Buddhist place. All Burmese mandatorily visit this place once in their lifetime. The pagoda was known by the Portuguese chroniclers as Nigam Varela, or Digao Varela. One of the most common rituals for those who visit the stupas is to pour water on the head of the image of Buddha, in the same precise place that corresponds to the astrological sign of the devotee. The Shwedagon Golden Dome, which is 98 meters tall, is believed by the population to have a legendary age of 2,500 years. However, archaeologists unanimously agree that it was built between the 6th and 10th centuries. It is common to find paintings that illustrate stories and express gratitude towards the Supreme. The gigantic Mahaganda bell laid undisturbed for several years in the Yangon riverbed. However, thanks to the skills of the Burmese, it was retrieved from there. The bell is believed to be cursed because the British that took it from the temple cast it into the river in 1827. Another bell, yet to be recovered, is the one taken by Felipe de Brito in 1612 from the same temple to produce cannons. It lies in a spot called the Three Rivers Junction. It was not only the Westerners that succumbed to the temptations of the temples. According to Portuguese writings, 475 kilograms of gold were taken from Shwedagon by a king named Banahadala. In Shwedagon, honorable foreign visitors were welcomed, as can be seen in the life-size statues with a slight Western appearance. Shwedagon is a place of prayer and meditation. The regular custom of sticking gold leaves in the temple has existed for a long time. A queen once offered her own weight in gold. The The splendor of Shwedagon is more evident at sunset. However, from sunrise till twilight, the affluence of the pilgrims is always constant. Practically all classical dance styles have their origin in Thailand, introduced by captive artists in Chiang Mai and Ayutthaya during the Burmese conquests in Siam. Dances are performed by women or men dressed as women. The Oktay Pue Puppet Theater presents colorful puppets that usually reach 1 meter in height, in a show that is considered to be the most expressive of Burmese art. A master puppeteer handles 12 or more strings in some puppets. Associated with the festivities are the street hawkers. Eating in the streets on improvised tables is a well-rooted custom and a way of life for many families. Toward the end of the 18th century, 2 churches existed in Rangoon. Nowadays there are 5. In one of the churches, Our Lady of Fatima is venerated. The Pilgrim Virgin, Our Lady of Peace, visited Burma on 2 occasions. The most recent was in December 1999. A statue and a memorial tablet highlight this fact.
Where the Catholics here in Myanmar, they are very devoted to Our Lady of Fatima, just as they are devoted to Our Lady of Lourdes, no? And in every Catholic family, you will always find a statue of Our Lady of Fatima. And every night they will say prayers and light candles. And whenever the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima comes, they all go to the parish church. It's a special day for them.
The Catholic community who maintain with pride their Portuguese surnames also frequent the temple. The name Ambrosio de Rosario still lives on in the memories of the community. In 1806, he accompanied a missionary, San Germano, on a trip to Italy, stopping in Brazil and Lisbon. He would go on to become a prominent, well-known surgeon in Rome. While prayers are held in the temple, there are people playing football outside. The adults link Portugal to the worshipping of Virgin Mary and Saint Anthony. It's possible that the name of Vasco da Gama will light some memories. For children, Portugal is associated with football. Rui Costa and Luis Figo are 2 of the stars that are regularly mentioned in sports magazines and newspapers.
Fico, very good, number 1.
While they are awaiting official Portuguese language courses, which was a common practice until the end of the 19th century, there exist people that demonstrate what they know and what they have learnt by themselves.
En que queda parte do grupo, com o suporte de mais alto nível de assistência técnica.
Chinlon is a favorite Burmese team sport. It can be played anywhere with or without a net and without competitive purposes. However, there are rules. The rattan cane ball with 12 centimeter diameter can be touched with all parts of the body except the hands. Spinning a top is not usually a game for children. However, here, it is popular among the Catholic children. In a country where television has no relevant role and many homes are without electricity, old and young people spend much of their time playing games, which are held frequently on the streets during the day or night. The seacoast of Rangoon has seen a lot of development. Investment has come in from Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and even Macau, and many others await new signs of liberalization by the government. Since the moderate pro-capitalist general Tan Shui assumed power in April 1992, there has been an increase in private cars on the large avenues, and satellite dishes have occupied the roofs. Despite modernization, expressions such as hurry, rush hour, no time do not appear to be a part of the local vocabulary. The frenzy of the capital Rangoon is far away from the other southeast capitals. Nat worship has also survived modernization. Before undertaking a trip, a driver visits the sanctuary of the protector spirit of the roads. Buffaloes and burning sun were found along Burma's roads throughout the centuries by Portuguese mercenaries and priests, in war or in religious missions. Heading north, a corridor of flat lands dominated by rice and sugarcane plantations. Halfway between Rangoon and Mandalay is Taungoo, the ancient capital where the unification process of Burma took birth several times. Taungoo is an important outlet for teak. Teak is produced in the mountains of neighboring states. Here it is still possible to view the rare elephants that exist in the country. The kingdom of Taungoo was always an obstacle to King Ava's plan of unifying Burma, along with the enemies in the south, the Portuguese, who were eager to do trade in the interior. At the gates of Mandalay, the magnificent Quang Mu Dao Pagoda is one of the many wonders that await us in the north. Considered as the city with the strongest Burmese character, Mandalay was the last capital prior to the British colonial period. Nowadays, it is the second urban center of the country, an important cultural center and reputed religious place. The name of the city has its origins in the hills nearby, from where the visitor can have a sight of all three ancient capitals. Mandalay Fortress was in fact a palace. Much more than a simple royal chamber, it was a truly fortified city inside the city. Xuanandao Kyong is a good example of Burma's monasteries, built entirely in teak without any nails. The local architecture tends to use designs extracted from Hindu-Buddhist mythology. In addition to these designs, angels inspired from Christianity are quite common. At one time, this building was part of the imperial palace. It was in this space where a monastery was dismantled and rebuilt in 1880. Angels inspired from Christianity, contrary to the Buddhist angels, have wings and are so common that we can see them in walls, borders of roofs, and the facades of numerous Buddhist temples. Descendants of Portuguese craftsmen conceived these angels. Although he does not understand Portuguese, the Archbishop follows the RTPI Portuguese television broadcasts, thanks to satellite TV. The Bayengyis are proud of their origins.
Well, we are proud of it, you see, because we are Roman Catholics. Because in a country where there is only Buddhists, the main part of the country is Buddhist. Buddhist morality is very high, and nearly as Roman Catholic. We have very good relation, Roman Catholic and Buddhist, and especially the Buddhist monks also celibate. They don't marry, you see, like Roman Catholic. You see, they stay away from married life. You see, they use the saffron robe. We use the white robe. For us, since this government allow any religion to carry on as long as it doesn't go against the government, you see. So we are free to worship, you see. So we are happy about that, you see. We can have our own feast, our only thing. Sometimes, you see, if we want external feast, you see, then external procession and all, we have to inform the authority, that's all. We don't have any restriction whatsoever.
There exist 8,000 navigable rivers in Burma. A boat trip from Mandalay to Ava allow us to appreciate two ancient capitals. On the right, hills covered with golden stupas announce Sagaing. On the left, Amarapura, the center of the empire for short periods of time. Linking both is a bridge dating back to 1934, which was until not so long ago the only one that crossed the Irrawaddy. For 4 centuries, Ava was the center of the Burmese Empire. No other capital has had this honor for such a long time. Crop fields, villages, monasteries, and pagodas in ruins nowadays occupy the royal lands. Some parts of the walls are still in good condition. Signs of the devastating earthquake of 1838 are still visible in many structures, mainly in the watchtower known as the Leaning Ava Tower.
Quando os portugueses chegaram à Birmânia,
When the Portuguese arrived in Burma, Ava was a kingdom on the decline, occupied by the Shan ethnic group, originating from the mountainous zones neighboring China. Having consolidated their power in the south through the conquest of Cosmim and Martaban seaports, the Burmese turned their attention to Ava. Their conquest was fast, thanks to the role of Portuguese mercenaries with cannons that scared off the Shan.
Foi Ava, anos depois.
Many years later, Ava was the first place of exile for the Portuguese from Syria. A majority of them were given land and the assistance of the Catholic priests. The rest, experts in the art of war, were entrusted the guard of the imperial palace. Incorporated in military as well as hereditary units, these men would form the artillery base of the Second Tengu Empire. The arched ceiling of the Kwaktal Gi Pagoda is guarded by winged angels made of plaster, detailed and colorful designs that seem to reflect the Portuguese presence in these places. There are descriptions that document the presence of the Portuguese shipowner Simão de Vargas, personal friend of the monarch, and Antonio Camarata, who was the chief of the royal guard in the royal courts of Ava. In addition to reproducing the religious splendor of the buildings of the past and even the most common daily life scenes, the panels show foreigners inside boats with sails, equipped with cannons and crew of African origin. Other illustrations represent native boats, sacred and non-religious buildings, real and imaginary animals, and with the presence of winged angels with Western appearance. To prevent the spread of Christianity, the Talun Min king kept the most skillful in the art of war and exiled the rest to Prainma village. From this place they were sent to Mu Valley, between the Chin, Win, and Mu rivers, where they founded 8 villages. The Portuguese chronicles reported, "They were captives of the king and were installed in villages or spread throughout the kingdom. As captives, they were not allowed to leave the country." The Shuebo region, which has jurisdiction over the Bayingyi villages, has been inhabited continuously since the 3rd century BC. Shuebo served as the capital from 1760 to 1764. King Alongpaya had his military stationed here. The best marksmen of the empire could be found here. Following the military missions, many Bayengyis didn't return home, contributing significantly to the depletion of the village population. We are in Mongla, the oldest Bayengyi village, a lupin, peanuts, and broad bean production center. Here we can find people who search the river waters for gold, and those who bury the dead in Catholic graveyards and sing carols during Christmas. It was here on the banks of the River Mu that in 1613 the first Portuguese prisoners from Syriam were installed and later sent to Ava. The more than 700-kilometer path was covered by foot by followers of Felipe de Brito that totaled a few thousand. According to some historians, including Faria de Souza, the followers consisted of Portuguese, Euro-Asians, African, and Malabar natives. Formerly soldiers and shipbuilders, they reached the level of peasants. Here they married with local women and gradually forgot their native language and surnames. However, they maintained their Catholic faith. In the fertile plains of the center of Myanmar, being Catholic is considered as being a Portuguese descendant. As soon as they arrived, the exiled people cultivated the fields with those products that were familiar to them in Portugal, such as corn, broad bean, sorghum, and cabbages. In terms of the food, the villages were immediately self-sufficient. Nowadays, just as in the past, food comes from what is grown in the fields and what is fished from the river. Separated by rows of big trees, there exists the coconut trees and palm trees, from which is extracted the most popular alcoholic drink among the Bayengyis. These people are distinguished from the other Burmese by their predisposition to drink and good humor. The community customs still remain strongly deep-rooted. The rice harvest, which is cultivated twice per year, is made collectively, as well as the thrashing, which is done on a private thrashing floor, but in groups. Everybody participates in the profit, which will be shared by all. Therefore, the village, faithful to that spirit of solidarity, will take care of the needy, avoiding the formation of social barriers. Although not visible, there exists in the village a clear frontier established between the Catholics and the Buddhists. However, everybody, irrespective of their beliefs, live in harmony. Although collectively, tasks are divided. The production of cigars, for example, is exclusively managed by 3 families that supply the village and the neighboring villages. The raw material also cultivated in the region is dried previously in the proper place. Smoking has definitely contributed to an increase in cardiac problems, the major disease that affects the community. The average life expectancy is around 55 to 60 years, which is high for this region of the planet. Malaria is another problem, as well as snake bites, which are often deadly.
Well, they were sent to, I think, 12 villages, 12 places, you see, in groups. Because they were afraid of the rebellion from the Portuguese. Because Portuguese were quite, those days, quite capable of fighting and so on. You see, so they put very small groups in different places, you see. And I think one of the biggest places is Chandayua. It's put quite a lot there, and this is how they go up. Nearby, another about 4 or 5 miles, Chongyo was called. All the Indians were put there, you see, because their color is a little black. So the white ones are put Monla and Chandayua. So it was that way, you see, it started.
And they separate them by race?
Yeah,
by color?
By color. But you see, since either black or white, you see, Portuguese or Indian, they were Roman Catholics. We tried to have the intermarriage among themselves, you see. So this is how we carry on this a kind of evangelization, you see, together, and till today. It's just.
Despite Goa's constant appeals, towards the end of the 17th century, Portuguese missionaries did not go into the interior and limited their activity to Syriam and Rangoon. The Italian Barnabites substituted them. In 1770, they established the first school and seminary in Munla. In both institutions, they taught to read and write Portuguese and Latin, among other subjects. Camoy's language was forgotten, but not the songs. There were times when Bayingyi villages were practically deserted due to the successive rebellions that marked Burma's history. In theory, all of them could have been Bayingyi villages that gradually were converted to Buddhism or even Islam. Although there exist several religions, there is a common bond in terms of the profession. Everybody is a peasant, and sometimes a fisherman. When the water level is low, they gather in groups heading towards the big Irrawaddy River. Maygun village is totally submerged due to the construction of a dam in the Mu River. Only the church, isolated on an artificial island, survived. The Shwibu priest continues to celebrate Mass here every Sunday. He arrives by boat, accompanied by 100 followers. The priest is a respected figure, a privileged speaker solving problems between the population and the authorities, as was seen during the process of transfer of the Maygun inhabitants. However, the authorities do not always reclaim the Bayingyi properties. There have been times when the authorities have come in support of the Bayingyi. In 1853, the Shwibu governor paid all the expenses for a parish house. With the help of a car battery, hymns are rehearsed with the accompaniment of an organ for the procession in honor of the Virgin that is held annually. Prominent among the divinity venerated is the infant Jesus of Prague. In a new village, approximately 100 meters from the previous, they have begun planting trees. The inhabitants have fixed crosses at the entrance doors of their homes, a clear sign of their identity. Here again we see the brown hair, whitish skin, prominent noses that have a slight resemblance to the natives of the Portuguese provinces of Beira and Trás-os-Montes. Everyone in the village is related. All are brothers, uncles, and nephews of someone. The relationship between the Portuguese and their Burmese wives and the inevitable integration into the local society has resulted in the fading away of the Portuguese language. Despite the poverty, guests are served tea, tangerines, fried fish, and the traditional kalpo, red sticky rice with sugar on top. The Burmese version of the Portuguese Christmas, rabanadas. There are also honey buns at a Burmese table, signs of Mediterranean cuisine. The Tanaka bush grows in the center of the country. Its thin husk is mashed in a stone with some water and is used as a cream. Spread on the face and other parts of the body, it has a dual purpose: to beautify and protect from the harshness of the sun. Some women cover all their body with Tanaka before going to bed. As an alternative, Tanaka can be obtained as a cosmetic liquid or in powdered form. There exist specialized shops selling these bushes and all the components extracted from them. Founded in 1637, Chaon Thaya was the residence of several prestigious missionaries. Their names are engraved in the marble tablet near Our Lady of Ascension Church. The villages were abandoned by the Portuguese ecclesiastical patronage for several years, and thereafter they were entrusted to the Barnabite missionaries, who had failed in China and had moved to the southeast. In sharp contrast to the seaport of Malacca, the poverty prevailing in the community and the lack of preachers led the city into progressive decline. The Burmese culture absorbed them completely, leaving them only with the cult of the saints.
As Catholics here of Chandayua, we have every year this three big feast days. That is first Christmas. People from afar also came. The villagers who were walking outside the village came for this feast, and especially Easter. Easter also they came back to celebrate. It's a celebration, and the last one is most important is church feast.
The Bayengyis believe that they have noble ancestry and are respected, even admired by other Burmese. They have a reputation for being brave, happy, and above average education levels. And has been their tradition, they still continue to mix. The construction and rebuilding of temples is part of the strategy of the Catholic Church. Throughout the centuries, the missionaries stimulated dialogue between Buddhists and Catholics. They opened schools, stimulated cultivation of agricultural land, and rebuilt several churches, which were periodically burned down. The lepet, a delicious delicacy composed of a mix of tea leaves with lentils, sesame, and toasted peanuts, accompanies all meals and is a sign of peacemaking and sealing of agreements. Moniwa is one of the biggest supply centers for agricultural products such as vegetables and palm tree syrup. In addition to warehouses, Moniwa has cotton, flour, sugarcane, dough, and vegetable oil factories. An important Catholic center, the Bayingyi's presence dates back to the 17th century, after King Ava sent them here to work in the copper mines. On the ceilings and walls of Pagoda La Kaong Ming near the Changu village, there exist references to the Portuguese presence. Anyone born in the country was the property of the king, as well as all refugees, castaways, prisoners of war, and even those that accidentally came here. Anyone who got married in the country would be forced to stay. They would be killed if they ever tried to abandon the country. Following its tradition, the church kept a unique color. From the ceiling above the pulpit and the niches saints, ribbons hang, golden strips, and several colored balloons. The first Bayingyi priest was ordained in Chenggu-yu in 1793. Nowadays, there are around 700 Catholics here. Christmas is approaching, so everybody recites the rosary in the evening. The relationship between the Buddhists and Catholics is harmonious. The Buddhists don't get in the way of the monks as well as the Catholic priests. The same can be said about the Christians. During the Second World War with the Japanese occupation, the Bayingyis passed hard times. Those who spoke English and had a European appearance immediately attracted the attention of the invader. There is another Bayingyi village, 16 kilometers from Chenggu-yo. Chenggu-yo is inhabited exclusively by Portuguese descendants. 1,100 people are distributed among the 200 houses. At dawn, work begins. Like the animals, peasants wake up early. The inner city of Chenggu-yo is made up of a set of lined houses on a dusty road. The threshing floor and the houses are cleaned every day. On Christmas Eve, this is done more often. It is normal for everyone to bathe with cold water 2 to 3 times per day using natural soap. The Bayingyi families have strong religious roots. Contrary to other Burmese, the Bayingyis have 2 names, one Buddhist and another Christian. According to local beliefs and customs, more than social, marriage is a religious subject. Males are allowed to get married when they're 16 years old, while the girls get married when they're 14. Seldom has a Bayingyi married a person from a different religion, and when that happens, the outsider converts to Catholicism, never the opposite. At home, paintings of saints, Christ and the Last Supper occupy the space along with family pictures. On the walls are pictures of those who have passed away, were immortalized in magazine covers. Pigs, cows, and chickens are raised. However, the buffalo is the most important animal, in life as the driving power and in death as a meat supplier. Animals are slaughtered daily. In a question of minutes, the animal is killed and the meat separated from the skin and internal organs from the carcass and given to the customer as requested. Not so long ago, the Buddhist community strictly practiced vegetarianism. The Bayingyis were the only ones to slaughter animals for consumption. Now that the Buddhists eat meat, the Bayingyis continue to be the butchers of the community. Like in some Portuguese villages, sausages of meat are made in these villages. These will be eaten throughout the year. Mass is the ideal occasion of meeting for the people of this village and the neighboring villages. During the feast of the village saints, everyone returns to the ancestral house for celebration, meeting family and making new friends. Another Brito to be immortalized in Burmese history is Ignacio de Brito, a polyglot priest that compiled grammar, wrote books, and composed religious hymns. The priest was, and is still, the gathering element of the Bayingyi communities. During Lent, novenas are held in one of the houses. Every day it will be held in different houses. The prayer is collective and always in front of the statue of the Virgin. The oldest people of the village tell stories about those that have left or passed away. This form of oral transfer of knowledge will pass from generation to generation. As Christmas is approaching, the younger ones are given more attention. During the procession of the body of Christ, the children go first and then the adults. Every family has someone participating in the event, normally children and women. Among Bayengyis, there are those who complain about the Buddhists, not their neighbors, but those that live far away, who try to treat them as second-class citizens. However, this does not disturb them. They know that this is also their land, and the Buddha, that is assumed to be pure Burmese, was imported from India. A small altar was built in the courtyards and is lit up with candles and perfumed with incense and flowers. Following the prayers in the first house, the devotees proceed to the next and successively to the rest, until all of them are blessed. Everything is rehearsed to the minutest of details, even the collective kneeling, at the time the priest raises the chalice with the body of Christ. As night falls, candles are lit. The procession still has a long way ahead. Priest Azamolti wrote on July 26, 1788, "All of my Christians speak Portuguese. Because I understand and speak reasonably this language, I can teach catechism and listen to their confessions. They take good care of me and do everything for me." Similar to what occurs in the Portuguese villages, during this period the pig that was fattened throughout the year is killed and cut into pieces. The entire process is done under the light from fluorescent lamps powered by car batteries. However, contrary to Portuguese tradition, the meat will not be salted. The hot and humid climate doesn't allow it. In the villages, there are no refrigerators. The meat has to be eaten in the following days. The weighing and the sale is done at the same place. The hymns composed by Father Inácio de Brito are dedicated to the Virgin Mary. However, the Barnabite that was in prison for several years also composed Christmas carols that were sung in Latin and Portuguese. Nowadays, we can hear the more modern themes. Christmas Eve would be just like any other day if it wasn't for the songs played during this time. The work in the field continues. The abundance of water is essential for cultivation of rice. The Nabet inhabitants cannot complain about lack of water. During the rainy season, the fields are transformed into lakes. Relatives from neighboring villages arrive in ox carts to jointly celebrate the festivities. The villagers go to the fields with a small hoe and a snack. There are several tasks to be done before the celebration. Rivers are a part of the landscape. They take care of daily hygiene, washing of clothes, and amusement. The Bayingyis also display their beliefs with tattoos. Some details remind us of Portugal, the maize fields and the church tower that stands out from the trees. In the churches, there is a constant presence of Our Lady of Fatima and St. Anthony of Lisbon, that the locals believe is of Padova in Italy.
St. Anthony, well, for the devotion to St. Anthony is very strong among those who are descendants from Indians. Very, very strong. St. Anthony is, they must have St. Anthony even more than God. You say that they need St. Anthony by all means, you see. They have the very great devotion.
The baptism records from the parish, those that were kept, date back to 1901. The surnames of the godfathers are very familiar. The names are also similar to the Portuguese ones. Some of the gravestones in the village graveyard remind us of those who perished during the Second World War. The cultivated fields that separate Nabet from the Buddhist village were once battlefields. In 1945, the Japanese cavalry ransacked the village and raped the women. During the process, several Bayingyis, after being forced to dig their own graves, were executed. The Christmas traditions are strictly followed. The Mass is at midnight, a touching liturgy in a crowded church. At the end, barefoot, the devotees kiss the statue of the infant Jesus, the main figure in the scene of the birth of Christ. The following morning there is another Mass, and once again the pilgrimage to the nativity scene. All the ceremony is chanted. The organ starts the theme, followed by a magnificent choir. The unison of voices is impressive. There are women in the front benches with rosaries in their hands and veils over their heads, with the children beside them. The men gather behind, near the entrance door. Although Bayengyis don't believe in spirits, several traditional Burmese elements penetrated into the cult. In the villages, the Nats are invoked with holy water and candles before the beginning of a journey. If this journey happens on Christmas Day, it has a double meaning. In the community history, there are cases in which Catholic priests became Nats after their death. Groups of girls and boys go door to door singing the carols. There are visits to several houses. In the previous evening, there was a similar session. On Christmas Day, it's time to visit the relatives. eat what is left from the previous night, and drink ginger and palm tree wine. On the table, sticky rice, bean, wafers, sweet sorghum, fried banana and tea. Outside, drying, the fuel that was used to prepare these delicacies, in this case buffalo dung. Here, nothing is wasted, everything is transformed. Once again, we are invited. In all the houses we have things to eat and drink. There are no fortunes to be found here. A mixture of races that were once merged in Burma, the Bayingyis of today know almost nothing about the sailors, their ancestors. Immortal City, Amarapura, translated from Burmese as ancient capital. There is nothing better to represent that immortality than the U-10 Bridge. 1.5 kilometers in length and made of teak, it is more than 2 centuries old. A harmonious coexistence between the Bayingyis and their Buddhist neighbors was always a reality. Never has religion been a motive for social conflicts. The explanation is simple. By nature, the Buddhists are tolerant. The chronicler Lopes de Castanejera noted, "There are more calm and tolerant than any other race. They are honest and interested in our customs and eat what we eat." The Bayingyis inherited from the Portuguese the ability to adapt. Their long stay in the Mu Valley is proof enough. In this land where all paths cross each other's, and Portugal rediscovers itself in the lost steppes of the Bayingyis.